Welcome to Programming with Professor Califf. Today I'd like to talk about formatting numeric output in Java. When we print data out from our programs, we need to think about the users who are actually going to be looking at that information. This is why we want to use appropriate labels and space things out well. Another piece of making our data more easily comprehensible to users is formatting our numbers nicely. Java provides a couple of different ways for us to do that. First, we're going to look at the DecimalFormat class. This class allows us to specify a particular format for our floating point numbers. We can specify the number of digits before or after the decimal point. We can specify commas. We can give it a $sign. We can also say this is a percent, which will not only give us the percent sign at the end, but will also multiply the value by 100. So that we're getting the value that makes sense, even though we've been computing with the value. So 0.75 is what we use for 7.5%. And there are other things that we can do as well, which you can find in documentation, but we'll focus on these things. So first, let's see how we actually set up a DecimalFormat object. DecimalFormat is part of the java.txt package. So we'll need to import it, just as we have imported some other things. Then we need to create a string with the pattern we want. And we'll look at how we do that in Eclipse in a moment and play with some different options that we have. Then we'll actually declare and create a DecimalFormat object that uses the pattern string that we want to use. So we'll say DecimalFormat, my format is assigned new DecimalFormat. That exact same pattern that we use with all of our object creation. And then in the parentheses, we will pass the string that is the pattern we want to use for the format. Now that we have the formatting object, we'll want to actually use it. So what we use is the format method of our DecimalFormat class. We pass it a parameter that is the number we want to have formatted. And then that's going to apply the pattern it has and give us a string, which we could then print or use in some way. So string numster is myFormat.format 1103.2 perhaps, and then system.out.println is going to take the string that we created and print the number out in the nice format that we've chosen. Let's go try this out in Eclipse and see what some of our options are in terms of these patterns. Of course, we want to start by creating a class. I'm just going to work in the object practice package that I've been working in several of these. Let's create, format practice. And we want to make sure it has main. I'm going to skip generating comments today. We're going to go ahead and import, and that was java.txt, all spelled out, and then DecimalFormat, which is the class we want to use. So let's come down here. And the first thing I want to do is work on a pattern string. So let's actually create a pattern that gives us a standard dollar and cents sort of pattern. So I'm going to make a string object, which I'll call pattern string. Make that be $, and then let me go ahead and just give you a standard pattern that we might use. So this is $, number sign. What number sign means is this represents a digit, but the digit doesn't have to be there. And then the comma, which gives us grouping, and then the number sign, so that gives us 2 more digits, and then the 0. And then the 0 says this digit must be here. So this is saying if I have less than $1, I'm still going to see that 0 here. And then we have the decimal point, and the zeros after the decimal point say you must have exactly 2 digits after the decimal point, which is what we typically want when we're dealing with money. So now that we have that pattern, let's go ahead and create a decimal format object. So decimal format, my format, is assigned new decimal format, and then our pattern string that we just created. So anything formatted with this decimal format object called my format is going to be formatted using this pattern. So let's actually see what that looks like. So I'm going to make a string, which I'm going to call money, and use my format dot format, and then let's give that a number. So to start with, let's actually just give it 0.7 and see what happens. So then I want to print that out so I can actually see that result. And let's run that. So we passed it 0.7, and you'll see that this has the $, then 0, and then 0.70 because we specified that was there. So let's play with this just a little bit. So first of all, I want to try a very large number. So I'm just going to put a whole bunch of 4s here. And run that. Now, one thing I want you to notice is that we only put 1 comma here, but because we put that 1 comma in, the patterns are smart enough that it's going to put in all the commas according to standard grouping. So we don't have to make a huge long pattern to get lots of those commas in there. We just have to get far enough to have the 1 comma. Okay, let's play with something else. Let's actually just add a few extra digits at the end, and then I also, well, let's do that first. So let's save that and run it. And you can see that the 7 won, and then we stop because we said exactly 0. Now notice that we can have more. If you don't have enough room in your pattern for all the digits to the left of the decimal point, those digits are all going to be there because that's part of the number. You don't get to change that most significant part of the number. But to the right of the decimal point, it will not go further than we tell it to. I also want to just quickly show you the effect of the zeros versus the number signs. So if I change all of those to zeros instead of the pound or hash signs or number signs, it's called all of those, right? Then that's not going to actually change my output because my number is very big and all of those digits are going to be there. But if I change this so that it's only 44, then let's see what happens then. In that case, because I have zeros instead of the number signs, I actually have to fill in zeros here. So that's an important piece of the pattern, and sometimes that's very useful in certain circumstances. We want to see those extra zeros so we can specify them. Let's actually look at creating a % format. I also want to show you that we don't have to actually set up a separate string. So I'm going to actually make a % format and just directly say new decimal format. And then I can actually just put the string in between quotes right here. So I'm just going to make this 0.0%. So what this says is that you have to have at least 1 0 before the decimal point and exactly 1 0 after the decimal point in the %. So now if I use this, and note that I can also do that on the other end. I can just say system.out.println, and I can put the format piece right there inside the print line. Now, if you're more comfortable breaking those out and sort of going step by step, absolutely do that. That is absolutely fine. But I want to show the people who sort of like the shortcuts that you can do those too. So it's %format dot format. So remember, we have the object that is of type decimal format. We're calling the method format from that object. And then we're passing it the things. So we've done a lot with 0.075 for our various sales tax things. So we'll do that. And let's see what that gives us. So you see what happens is it takes the 0.075, multiplies it by 100, so we're getting the sort of standard percent value. And then, of course, it does include the percent symbol. Okay, now one of the big things, it turns out, I'll show you, we have another way to handle currency and percents. But one of the big things that we really want to use decimal format for in a lot of cases is having any number in a particular pattern. So suppose that you're doing something where you want to keep 3 digits after the decimal point. So in that case, I might set up I'm going to say this is a report format, because that would be in a common place, maybe in some sort of science report. I'm supposed to have something to the thousandth accuracy. So let's make a new decimal format. And here, I'm going to go ahead and throw in these extra pound signs or number signs for the digits to make sure I get that comma in there. So that comma really helps readability in a lot of cases. And then if I want exactly 3 decimal points, then, or 3 numbers after the decimal point, then I'll have 3 zeros after that decimal point. And so that might look like system.out.println report format dot format 93.17. Well, actually, let's just say 93.7 right now, so that we see what difference that's making. Now, if we run that, we're going to see that we have 93.7000. Now, here's a point. I want to show you the impact of the zeros if we have a lot of digits. So in this case, it's saying pad it on out with zeros, but it's also doing something else. So let's say we've got 7.158213, and we're printing that out with that same format string. And that's going to be 93.716. Now, one thing to notice is that we are rounding, and that's true with our money as well. So if we change this so that we've got 71734 instead and run that, then we're going to see that we end up with 0.72, because these formatters are going to round when they reduce the number of digits they're showing. Now I want to show you something else, which is if I replaced the zeros with the number signs after the decimal point, then I'm still going to cut things out. So if I have all of these digits, this is limiting the number of digits available to just the 3. But what's different about it is that if we change it so they've got 93.7 again, then it's only going to print what it has. It's not going to print those padding zeros. So after the decimal point, the 0 is going to force that digit to be there. The pound sign is going to allow that digit to be there. Let's go back, because I want to talk to you about another way that we can actually format the numbers, because some of our situations are very consistent. we often want to format numbers as currency. We also often deal in percentages and want to display them and calculate with them differently, just like my 7.5% sales tax example, where I want to display it as 7.5%, but calculate with it as 0.075, just as we've been doing. So as we've seen, we can certainly specify patterns for decimal format to do that, but Java also provides us with a shortcut for these. We have a NumberFormat class that has static methods that return a NumberFormat object, which will correctly format currency or percents. So we have this static NumberFormat getCurrency instance, and that's going to return a NumberFormat object that we can use to format currency. Same thing with our getPercent instance. And then in both of those cases, NumberFormat has a format method that works just like our DecimalFormat method. So let's pop back over to Eclipse and just quickly take a look at how we use these. So what I'm going to do is to say add NumberFormat. So we're declaring a format. So I'm going to call this currency or cur format for currency format, and say new, or sorry, I'm not doing new. I'm saying NumberFormat dot get currency instance. One thing you should notice, and this is one of those really nice things that Eclipse just did for me. You notice that there was a red line that it was all concerned about NumberFormat. When I got to this point, Eclipse just said, hey, you need a NumberFormat import, and actually came in here and added it for me. So that's great, but we're not always in a circumstance where we're using something that will do that for us. So yes, with NumberFormat, just like DecimalFormat, we do need our import. It's also in java.text. Now, one thing to notice in Eclipse is this is a static method. And notice that it is in italics to help us see that it's a static method. So Eclipse, you should notice that it does things for you to help you see what's going on with your code. So for instance, if I select money, it's going to also show me the other place where money shows up. And then it does things like italics is a static method. And then I'm also going to create a percent instance. So let's get a percent format. And for that one, we're going to use NumberFormat.getPercent instance. And now I'm going to change this so that my money is using my currency format instead, and my I named that the same. Let's just change this one to be my percent format, which we won't be using. And then this percent format is now the number format that we were using before. So let's see what happens now when we run it with these instead. And you'll see that I'm getting the same basic results with this. Let's make this a very, very big number. Now, one thing to notice is that the percent instance by default doesn't have decimal points. So if you want a decimal place afterward, you'll want to build your own, because the get percent instance is just giving you a flat percentage with no decimal point in the percentage. And you can see that this works fine. Then I also want to show you if we don't have anything before the decimal point, that in fact, that's going to be the same. So that should give you some idea of how we do these. The lovely thing about them, of course, is that we don't have to actually figure out the format and create these things. It just gives us a fairly standard formatting for us to use. Okay, one thing I want to note as well when it comes to NumberFormat and the get currency instance is that these are really useful for localization purposes. So when we write our programs, sometimes we're writing programs that are going to be used in a lot of different places around the world. And they may use different currencies, and we may well want to represent things in the standard ways for theirs. Get currency instance by default will use the locality that the computer is set up for. So I'm set up for America, English, so it uses US dollars and cents and standard US kinds of rules. If we want to support localization, which we often do, this is great. If we need a particular kind of currency, so I'm in Europe, but I'm working in dollars and cents, then I can either use decimal format to give me exactly what I specify, as we did, or it actually turns out that there is a version of get currency instance and some of the others as well that allows you to specify the locale you want. So you can say, yes, I know the system is set up for France, but I want you to give me this one set up for the United States. Nice thing to be aware of, can be very, very helpful when we actually are trying to design programs that are going to be used in lots of different places. Thanks for watching. In the next video, we're going to start talking about how we can make decisions in our programs, which is very important for writing programs that do anything interesting at all.